This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan. And in for Amy this morning, Chicago Tribune editorial board member Kristen McQuarrie. And Kristen, turning our sights to the state again, I got to tell you, in response to the tax hikes that were rammed through last week, nothing like being insulted by your legislator if you disagree with him or her. And I cite Michael Fine, who is the husband of Laura Fine.
Mm-hmm.
She's a Democrat, Madigan roll call vote up there on the North Shore, Evanston, Wilmette, where people hate their money and hate you keeping yours, too. It's not just about them. It's also about taking yours. Michael Fine, writing in response to people who disagree with his wife's unsurprising vote for and enthusiastic vote for the tax hikes, no spending reforms. Let me know if you need a recommendation for a realtor. Southern Indiana is full of like-minded Trump people just like you. Bon voyage. Then somebody who suggested that Laura Fine had committed political suicide. Michael, apparently her de facto spokesman, said, political suicide, ha, here's a solution for you all. Pack up your families and move somewhere else, perhaps the southern states where guns, hate, immigrant bashing, and blaming are woven into the cultural fabric. Public education and social services are non-existent except for the 1%. You can live your lives on a compound. Bon voyage.
Mm-hmm. This is from her Facebook page, or no, her website. Okay, so she's relatively new, maybe in her second or third term, ran as a fiscal conservative. How about that? Passed budgets that were, consecutively $4 billion out of balance, $7 billion out of balance, and then now her husband is coming to her defense. This is what she says on her website. As your state representative, I am committed to fiscal accountability, bringing integrity back to Springfield, and most importantly, resolving our budgetary woes in a responsible and thoughtful manner.
Well,
we must...
Go ahead.
One more. We must continue to implement policies that encourage businesses to grow and create jobs, strengthen education, and protect consumers and the environment. Mm-hmm. So she, again, these suburban Democrats who put themselves out there as being fiscal conservatives and fiscally responsible, yet they let all of these unbalanced budgets fly through the General Assembly. And they just voted for a tax hike with none of the pro-business reforms that she claims to support on her website.
Yeah, all these fiscal conservatives are killing us. There's no question about it. Steve Anderson, by the way, led the Republican Surrender Caucus in the House, Republican from Geneva, pulled up an old article on him when he announced his candidacy for state rep, where he talked about wanting to lower taxes to improve the state's business climate. That was one of his campaign issues, his legislative goal is to lower taxes. He just led the Republican defection for Madigan's tax hikes and, again, no spend reform budget. Okay. And Chicago Tribune op-ed over the weekend. I assume this was also written by Clarence Page, who's been killing it lately on Illinois.
Editorial, not op-ed. Come on.
Okay.
Speak my language, please.
One of the sabotaging Illinois. That's the headline. Legislators' tax hike budget won't stanch the exodus of jobs and people. No, it will accelerate it. But this one sentence caught my eye. Decade after decade, the many lawmakers who undercut Illinois have rarely suffered consequences, except at my hands. Voters send them back to Springfield to repeat their failures, to keep bleeding the state of jobs and opportunity. So the question is, you going to do the same in 18? You're excited to send Laura Fine back, excited to send the 15 Republicans who defected back. That's the question. More of the same or something different? Well, one of the Republicans who voted for the tax hike with the 15, or among the 15, is Reggie Phillips. He's a state rep from Southern Illinois, from Charleston. He represents Eastern Illinois. And the Eastern Illinois' funding was central to two Republican defections, both Reggie Phillips as well as State Senator Dale Ryder. And, we've talked about Reggie a little bit last week because you have some empathy for his position.
I do.
I have less, even though I personally like Reggie a lot. I've gotten to know him. I supported him independently through my PAC when he ran for re-election. I was happy to do it because he's a successful businessman, great story, good family guy. I really like him personally, but I think he made a terrible decision last week voting in Liege with Madigan and Chicago Democrats for more of the same. And that's terribly problematic for Reggie Phillips, the state representative, because my view on politicians is they are means to policy ends. I don't care how much I like them or dislike them. They're the means to policy ends. And if they're not going to advance the economic liberty policy agenda in this state, then they need to be replaced. Well, that's just my view. But Reggie reached out to me, and he wanted to tell his side of the story, and at least he has the courage to stand forth and deliver on the rationale for his decision. So we're pleased to be joined by State Representative Reggie Phillips. Reggie, thanks for being with us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Dan and Kristen.
So the floor is yours. Explain your vote.
Well, I guess I'd like to start with he is no fool who gives away what he does not own in order to get what he can't afford to lose. So with that statement, tell me, Dan, and this is a question back to you.
Okay.
What was my alternative?
To vote against it.
What was the governor and the Republicans' alternative? You actually came against the governor's proposed budget and the GOP's proposed budget. Remember, you were against it. As you recall, it was a $37.1 billion tax hike.
Right.
4.95% also.
Right, against that. I'm against that. I'm against tax hikes. Right.
You know what? And I here's the real problem. If we could have held strong, all of us, 100%, and, the idea was that negotiations were still going on that Saturday. But that's really misleading because the negotiations fell apart somewhere between the 26th and the 28th. So the idea that negotiations were continuing on that Saturday, the 1st, that really wasn't true. On the Friday, the 30th, we took the vote for the Senate Bill 6 amendment. And remember, Madigan wanted 30 Republican votes on it. Well, this is all politics as usual because he knew he wasn't going to get 30 votes on it, but he really wanted to see how many votes he was actually going to get and if the Republicans would actually come, and put any votes on it. And I don't remember what it was, but I think it was like 23 votes, 23 votes for that amendment, which it was, it wasn't going anywhere. It was just to see if we would actually vote for it. And that's what started the momentum in the House, the fact that some of the Republicans are willing to vote for this tax increase. Because I looked at it as the alternative was still 4.95%. It was $37 billion unbalanced. And this one's $36 billion unbalanced. And I agree with you. It's like being in a rock and a hard place. It's like I said this on the floor, it's like taking a hammer and pounding my left hand and then pounding my right hand just to see which one's going to hurt worse. And both of them are going to hurt. It's equally painful. So at this particular moment, what's the alternative? Okay, so the idea was, give the governor, we've had 2.5 years of negotiation. Remember, World War II was over in 4 years, and that was a global war. So another 1.5 years would put us at that same amount of 4 years. What would we have in 4 years? Would we have a total surrender of Madigan? Well, let's see. No, probably not. 44 years in the House. There's a pretty good chance he was going to stay his course.
So, Representative, let me jump in here because some of our listeners probably don't know you that well or understand the position, because I was defending you when I was on the show on, Friday with Dan. Dan was wrong. Kristen was right.
Of course.
It happens all the time.
Yes.
But I think representing a university town put you in a unique position because universities have been squeezed more than any other part of the budget because they didn't have some sort of consent decree. And also, Dan talks about, politicians being a means to policy ends, but those policy ends often impact human beings. So can you tell us just about what it has been like? Dan is already smirking at me.
Well, I mean, in every direction they impact people's lives.
So you're Reggie Phillips. Your community is being decimated. Your university is starving. Your neighbors are being laid off. Tell us how that factored into your decision.
Well, I got 2 community colleges also, and they both have laid off folks. We had Eastern laid over 400 people off. And so under this particular president, he's been doing a fantastic job. He's been fiscally trying to be responsible and better with his funding and managing his money. And he's done a fantastic job when we've cut him by 60-some% of his income. We've got storefronts that are closed. We have houses that are upside down in my district. And it affects like 3 different counties because, the economic engines of a university. So I've watched this for 2.5 years. And, I realize that the university system has been, somewhat under the scrutiny of a lot of people's eye. We've been losing students for longer than the last few years, but nothing like the exodus we've had in the last 2.5 years, especially right now. We border Indiana State University at Terre Haute right here. I mean, we're 45 minutes away. And they've got a video out now boasting about how they're taking another 700 and some of our students just to that university from my district and close around my district. That just can't continue to happen. So
well, the question, but Reggie,
that's a big deal.
It is a big deal, but the question is, why is it happening? And is lack of state? Well, let me offer an alternative theory about why it's happening, because we've actually looked at the numbers at EIU. Because EIU, like so many institutions of higher learning in Illinois, the public ones are microcosms of Illinois government. Since 2006, Eastern Illinois University has seen their enrollment fall 40%, while state funding over the same period measured per student has risen 40%. EIU salaries. In Coles County, where the median household income is $36,000, 13% of EIU employees make $100,000 or more, 30% make more than $70,000, 45% make more than $50,000 before their benefits and taxpayer-funded pensions. Meanwhile, the in-state tuition has increased in real dollars 400% in the last 35 years. It's $11,730 in state for EIU, where Indiana State, since you mentioned it, charges $8,746 in state for students. So maybe it's actually state subsidizing empire building at Eastern Illinois and other places, and salaries that are just not proportional, while student enrollment is falling, and there are better options across the border, both in-state tuition and in some cases, because in-state tuition is so high in Illinois, even out-of-state tuition for Illinois residents is a better deal than in-state tuition for their Illinois conference peers. Maybe that's part of the story that isn't being told.
I'm not going to be able to argue against that. It's been part of my agenda, too, working with the current administration. Those are the very talks we've had. However, it's disingenuous to say that, per person, per student, as the enrollment has dropped, it costs go up because, if I were to open up a business, whatever business I'm going to open up in the first year, the second year, the third year, whatever it takes, and there's fluctuations in it, I still can't get rid of my custodian. I can't get rid of the cook. I can't get rid of. So there's certain expenses that you're going to have. So, you'd have to weigh that in there. But I can't argue against it. I said, and I told you, I believe the mismanagement over the last, from 2006 up until when Dr. Glassman took over, has been unequivocally wrong. And, speaking against it. Now, with Dr. Glassman, though, he's reduced costs like $40 million, and there's other things that he's reducing to bring them more fiscally responsible with their money. Now, you and I aren't going to be able to sit here and talk about, the cost of teachers or the cost of professors, and, that's the collective bargaining issue of that, and that's beyond my pay grade as a state representative. Those things have been indoctrinated in Illinois now for years. And so, what are we going to do against that? I haven't got a clue as we move forward. It's something that, we'll have to take one step at a time. But, I understand exactly what you're saying and agree with what you're saying and trying to hold them responsible. And I'm with you on that part.
Do you regret the vote? I mean, are you hearing? I also believe in representatives representing your district, and this maybe was a case of that. Maybe your constituents wanted you to vote for this because it would end the impasse. Are you hearing from that side?
Yes, I've obviously my district is very unique. I mean, it goes all the way down to Lawrenceville, Illinois. Lawrenceville has a couple of dentists. One of those dentists owed over $100,000, and she said, if we can't get some funding, and I was continually calling the comptroller to try to get her funding because she was getting ready to close the doors, pack up, and move out, and that would have left Lawrenceville, which is a pretty good-sized town with maybe one dentist. So that's some of the issues you got. Where there's not as many doctors per person than we have as you do up in your area. So I hate to see them being owed so much money that they can't stay in business. So there was multiple issues. I have a couple of different towns that have been funding, acting as the bank for the state of Illinois for, water and sewer at the prison and some of the other things. So that's not their job to act as the bank. So my district was a little bit, torn up with fiscally conservatives more south, like Crawfordville and Lawrenceville and Robinson there. So, and as you come up here, then you've got Eastern University, which is so it's two different parts of the catalyst. You got Republicans and you got Democrats, and it was tough for me. I tell you, I didn't like it, but I mean, I am not going to watch Eastern University. I'm not going to watch Charleston, Illinois. These are my friends. Pack up, lose their businesses, lose their houses, over this fiscal impasse.
Reggie, are you going to run again?
I will make that announcement the end of August.
Okay. Reggie Phillips, state representative for the 110th District, Charleston area in Southern Illinois, representing Eastern Illinois University and a couple of community colleges, as he mentioned. Reggie, appreciate you joining us and making your case. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And he joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
The more you